So I wanted to take a look at one last component of the Third Reich unit that we've been studying on race and the problems of nationalism and identifying certain groups in terms of race. And it's often easy as we take a look at something like the Third Reich and the horrors of the Holocaust and the concentration camps and say, well, that's too bad, but that's just that was them or whatever. It's easy to kind of be a little dismissive about it that way, and I wanted to guard against that by taking a look at the United States and some of the problems that they experience here. We've already taken a look at the problems with race and racism within the South and the origins of jazz that comes out of this. I want to take a look at one more element of the United States before we get too confident in patting ourselves on the back and take a look at some of the negative aspects within our history. And again, people tend to question, well, why do we have to take a look at the negative aspects? Why don't we only focus on the positive things, the wonderful things? And if we only take a look at positive things, then it becomes mainly propaganda, right? That's what propaganda does. It oversimplifies and it only focuses on things that are positive or wonderful, and generally tends to sweep the other kind of unsavory elements underneath the proverbial rug. And I want to be cautious about doing that. I want us to focus on seeing truth, and in order to see truth, we have to examine the good, bad, and the ugly, and then we can have a clearer picture of what actually happened. And I wanted to compare the U.S. internment camps as we think about the horrors going on in Germany to the concentration camps. And so there's some clear differences, just so we are all on the same page. I'm not equating them one for one. The internment camps in the United States were not slave labor camps as the concentration camps were in Germany, and there were no death camps in the United States that is systematically putting people to death. But the idea of losing liberties, identifying certain groups just based on their race and saying we're going to remove you from your current location and put you into this, prison, is quite similar, right? And so again, I don't want to kind of overstate this, but I do want to examine the commonalities to see if we can draw the kind of the cause and effect relationship to understand how these things come to be and why. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the executive order to take anyone of Japanese ancestry, and they're going to round them up and put them in an internment camp. And this goes back to all the way to the fifth generation, and so someone that has been a Japanese ancestor or Japanese descendant or someone with Japanese ancestry can be in the United States for even 5 generations, and they're still not considered American enough at this point. So during World War II, they gathered them up and put them into internment camps. Just to give you perspective of this, I am a um, fifth generation immigrant from the Germany and Norway, and so if the president said we're going to round up to the fifth generation Norwegian immigrants, anyone with Norwegian ancestry, I would be taken, right? Taken from my home and taken to these internment camps. And I've, lived here in the U.S. all my life. I've never lived anywhere else. And my parents lived here. My grandparents lived here, right, their entire lives. And we think of ourselves as U.S. citizens. And this is kind of the unfortunate mindset that's going on in the United States during World War II, where people that moved to the U.S. seeking that American dream, seeking more opportunities, are now seen as not American enough. And let's take a look at some of the images that come out of World War II after Japan bombed us with Pearl Harbor. There was a rise in racist attitudes towards anyone with Japanese ancestry, and so you see some cartoons coming out and racist imagery, and we'll take a look a little bit more about that when we talk about World War II in more depth. Just want to take a look at Dr. Seuss here. We generally tend to think of him as a kind of this fun-loving writer of children's literature, but he actually has some pretty racist cartoons if you delve way back into his past and way of promoting propaganda. these three cartoons mainly come from after the Pearl Harbor attack, and we just kind of go through them. I think we've covered this one on the bottom right hand side before when we were taking a look at propaganda, but here again we see the idea of dehumanizing people and connecting them to an animal. We saw that happening in Germany when they were connecting Jewish people to rats in the Eternal Jew, that documentary I showed you a couple of clips from. And here we see people from with Japanese heritage that are being connected to as cats, and so and it's easier to justify violence against them. It's easier to say we need to round them up and to do something about that. And so this is black propaganda that we've examined before, and it's also meant to be agitative to try to get us to shape a mindset, to shape a perspective of how we interpret a particular group, right? So maybe one alley cat, but jeepers, that's a heck of a lot of them, right? So the idea is that they're coming in to take over, and then you have this kind of Uncle Sam type figure here, the kind of bird-like figure that's trying to stave off or here, I guess, kill these cats one by one. And so the idea is that we need to be cautious because of these alley cats coming in. Or this image down here that takes a look at the idea of Mount Rushmore. If we don't stand up and do something, we are going to be taken over by Hitler and the Japanese emperor. And so, and again, the idea here is to depict someone of a different race with exaggerated features to make them look less human, so we can justify things like this, right? That's the mindset. And this camp here is in Idaho. It's kind of interesting, just right out of Twin Falls. And it was the largest internment camp in the United States. And so it's kind of interesting that pretty local, at least, when you guys are on campus here in Rexburg, it feels more local. But this is a camp that they had. And here's, the main office and or the visitor center that they have now. And then there's, the barracks that they put up. And we'll take a look at a couple more images. But 117,000 were taken to 10 internment camps. And two-thirds of them were native-born, considering themselves American. A couple images that come out of this time, right? Think about racism and similar ideas that we saw happening in Germany. We don't want any jabs back here ever. Very similar to what we see with the Star of David being put on the windows of businesses, or this one here about a neighborhood. Jabs keep moving. This is a white man's neighborhood, focusing on trying to suggest that certain races were going to ascribe a certain attitude, a certain behavior to one particular race, and suggest that we're going to see everybody that is that race or ethnicity as being this way. Here's another one of a Japanese American family and their home that's, then has this vandalism on there, no Japs wanted. And then inside the internment camps, this is just a photograph of some children that are taken. Clearly, they're not a threat to the United States sovereignty. They're not a threat to national security. But the idea is that we need to keep them in here because I guess they're the fears that they could be. But again, the mindset here, and we see this mindset happening in Germany as well, is that when fear takes over, it starts to bypass the frontal lobe, the frontal cortex, and we start to focus more on fight or flight, and we tend to not be thinking rationally, and so we tend to act in ways that we normally wouldn't act, and if we allow the fears that we have to override this, we can do some pretty devastating, some pretty horrific things, denying people of civil liberties as we live in a country that professes to be the land of the free. We can do some pretty horrific things, and so this is just one element within the United States. And again, just to clarify, one more time, that these internment camps are very different from the camps in Germany, right? These are not slave labor camps. They're not death camps. They're just holding cells. But the mindset here is we're going to let fear, we're going to focus on one particular group of people and suggest that the fear is that there's going to be some type of conspiracy where they undermine our autonomy, undermine our sovereignty, undermine our freedom, and so we need to do something drastic. And so these are some drastic actions when people are not thinking and they're focused solely on fear. So again, as we think about not replicating the past, one thing that we need to be cautious of is to be able to think rationally rather than get kind of fall into the propaganda and oversimplify and fall into fear.